Welcome back to Desert Sun Crypto. I'm your host, the Desert Sun. I wanted to talk today about what's going on in Congress. And as I said in my last video, you step away for a minute or a second, there's always something going on. And right now, there are a lot of things going on in the crypto space. And by crypto space, I mean, let's talk about Congress and bill moving around that's stuck in the Senate as we speak. I'll be honest with you. I had to really dive into everything that has been added to this bill, what the bill actually is, a lot of the concern that people have had over the bill, what it means to the space. And hopefully I can make this as clear as possible. But it reminded me of this Schoolhouse Rocks clip.
You sure gotta climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. Well, I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well,
Yes, that's exactly where this bill is. And let's take a dive and get right to it. So, H.R. 3684, which has passed the House, is now sitting in Senate, is a 2,702 pages. Don't let them fool you. Document that has gone through, and primarily what this is all about, it's not a cryptocurrency bill whatsoever. It's about infrastructure, and the infrastructure they're talking about in particular is transportation. Now, you may ask yourself, how does cryptocurrency end up in a bill? Well, it's simple. If you have followed politics, and even if you haven't, you have to have this idea that the least amount of effort put toward getting a bill done, ideally, would be the perfect scenario. That is impossible in Congress today, as it usually is. And so, what happens is a lot of these senators and representatives will add language, challenge language. And one of the things that this whole thing centers around, senators, I'll pull up this article, CNBC, senators file crypto broker amendment to infrastructure bill after industry backlash. Now, everything centers around this term broker. And because it didn't clarify what it was thought that the term broker would be applied to miners, stakers, software developers, and so on. And so Senators Wyden, Toomey, and Loomis got together and put together an amendment to the bill. Now, again, let me take a step back. This bill was not set up for just cryptocurrency. The angle that a lot of people are looking at in the space is that it's only about cryptocurrency. It's not about everything else. So if you can imagine that, although this is important to us when we're talking about the space, or talking about what this bill means to the crypto space, there are other components of the bill that, are holding up, it being passed. Will it pass? It looks like it is. And whether the adoption of this amendment goes through or not, it adds and begs a little bit more questions over what the regulatory arm is of the government. In particular, how this is going to be looked going forward. Now, the biggest thing on why this is important are the tax implications. As it sits today, every single person that is investing in the space has to report some of their earnings. The thing that you need to keep in mind is this is still very new. The IRS wants it to be a little bit cleaner, and perhaps that's what some of the language was set up to do. Others don't think so. But it's really interesting to see, who is in support of this amendment and who was really pushing this bill through. And I think it's very clear that there's a lot of ambiguity, and because there is, it's keeping a lot of people in the cryptocurrency space, primarily the companies, investors, and everybody concerned. The Blockchain Association actually chimed in a few days ago, and one of the concerns they had was first around this whole idea of this defining broker miners, as well as software, hardware wallets who don't engage in training of any kind. And let me back up just to clear it up. The digital asset provision in the infrastructure bill continues to be too broad and vague, and our fundamental concerns remain. That was the first one, which was the language of the broker. The second, it makes possible a massive increase in financial surveillance, potentially requiring companies to report information about individuals, even if they are not customers. And what they're talking about is right now there is no information that's required from miners, as there are a series of numbers and how they're identified. And the language of this bill would make it so there is more information that's needed, and therein lies this push and pull back and forth on what it could mean, and also where people sit on this. Now, on one side, you do have the many people in the space that say, well, let's not treat this as something you want to throw in the bill. Let's be a little bit more thoughtful with how we put this together. You got the other side saying, like, no, there's too many people getting away with murder, not necessarily, but they're getting away with not paying taxes and not being held accountable, and there's something to the tune of trillions of dollars that are not being taxed. I don't know that to be true. This is just something that's been passed around and said. But the Blockchain Association, if you look who is tying themselves in here, are Coinbase, one of the largest exchanges, if not the largest in the United States, Coin Center, Rabbit, and Square. Now, Coin Center, I'm going to circle around a little bit later, but I do want to show a few of the other things that they laid out with their language and their opposition to the bill as is without the amendment. As currently drafted, the recently announced bipartisan infrastructure bill would jeopardize the cryptocurrency and blockchain industry's future in the United States. The provision, titled Enhancement of Information Reporting for Brokers and Digital Assets, would likely lead to a host of unintended consequences, not only for the technology's ability to operate in the United States, but also for the privacy rights of all Americans. In a video that I believe I put out yesterday, I did bring up this issue, and it seems to keep coming up, and the conversation is kind of the elephant in the room, and it's this. Will this thoughtful, or this idea of this thoughtful regulation going forward, will it help the cryptocurrency space, or is it steering businesses and also individuals outside of the country to do business? If that is the case, we're looking at trillions of dollars that are going to be moving outside the United States. Will it matter? I don't know, but this is kind of the something that has been tossed around. Again, it could be FUD. It could be maybe again, just an issue that just seems to pop up every time they talk about regulation and the impact it'll have on the space. So the Wyden Loomis and Toomey edition, which was again proposed also by with some amendments with Senator Sinema and Portman, does clarify this somewhat and makes it a little bit more intended. So what it does, it defines a broker. And right here, just reading for the amendment, nothing in the section or the amendments made by this section shall be construed to create an inference that a person described in section 6054C1D of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 is added by the section includes any person solely engaged in the business of validating distributed ledger transactions, selling hardware and software, developing digital assets and their corresponding protocols, and it goes into talking about brokers and treatment of digital assets. Nothing in the section of the amendments made by this section shall be construed to create any inference for any period or prior effective date. Such amendments with respect to, again, it cites the the IRS, but in short, what they're doing is they're just trying to look out for the space. And I would say of anybody, of any senator that has been a champion for the cryptocurrency space, it is Senator Loomis of Wyoming. Uh, who has been pushing this forward? Well, it's the Biden administration, and in particular, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. Now, I haven't really talked about Janet Yellen a lot, which is okay, but Janet Yellen is the current head of the Department of Treasury, previously headed by Steve Mnuchin. Now, Janet Yellen isn't new to the finance space. She was actually chair of the Board of Governors for the Fed before Jerome Powell. But she's been involved with the Federal Reserve, I'd say, as long as Alan Greenspan was, all the way back to the 70s. If I'm not mistaken, that's where she met her husband. And so she is behind pushing this through, and it makes you wonder, why is it that the Federal Reserve individual who is now the treasurer pushing this through, and why are they going hard in the paint? I don't know, but I would wager that the Federal Reserve right now is shaking in their boots on what the cryptocurrency space could mean to their existence. And this I might talk about in another video, but I do want to go forward and stick to the topic here with this bill. The other thing is, we've talked in previous videos about who is the regulatory body. Is it Congress? Is it the SEC? Is it the CFTC? Well, here's this article here in Cointelegraph titled FINRA, an unnecessary and unqualified digital asset regulator. Well, you might say to yourself, wait, hold on a second. Who is FINRA and what do they have to do with the crypto space? Well, FINRA is the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, and anybody who works with mergers and acquisitions knows very well who FINRA is, and basically how you operate in that space is you're beholden to FINRA. Now, I want to jump straight to the bottom in what this article is getting at, and I think it's important to cover. If FINRA's approach to digital assets is any indication, there is legitimate concern that it will continue to stray further and further afield from its original securities-focused mandate by implementing similar, albeit incremental, expansions of its regulatory purview under the guise of better understanding and exploring these growing non-securities business lines. Folks, I think this idea of regulation is flooding people out of the market, and you're going to have a lot of people jump ship. Again, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. I see this clearly as a method of scaring people and to say, okay, well, if I'm going to get taxed, what am I going to do? I've seen this happen many and many times. One thing that I can think about in particular is medical marijuana. Medical marijuana, when in the early days of people setting up shop, they were they had every agency sticking their head up, knows where, and scaring people out of pursuing any kind of monetization in the marijuana industry. I see the same thing going on right now with regulation, that the more 3-lettered agencies, 4-lettered, 5-lettered agencies you introduce, the more it makes people nervous about keeping their stuff together, and in fear of, I don't know, thinking that they're going to serve time in jail. I don't know, but I just see the writing on the wall. Now, Jerry Brito, if you don't know who he is, I'll get to him in a second. Jerry Brito, one of the most knowledgeable individuals in this space, and he's not new here. But the other day he tweeted, "I'm thrilled to say that Ron Wyden, Cynthia Loomis, and Senator Toomey have introduced an amendment to explicitly exclude validators, hardware and software wallet makers, and protocol devs, developers, from the tax reporting provisions. Bravo. Now we have to get this thing passed." And, you know, Jerry Brito is the executive director of the Coin Center. Now, Coin Center are the ones that were in the Blockchain Association. And if you look at their supporters, it's almost like a who's who in the space. You've got Kraken, Square, Solana, Protocol Labs, Polychain, Grayscale, BitPay, so on. Anyhow, I want to share this because, if there's anyone in the policy arena, and Coin Center is a think tank, Jerry Brito knows what he's talking about. He's testified before in front of Congress. Now, here's 6 years ago, an interview he has when asked about regulation. I think this is important to listen to.
If this truly becomes a major source of value and a major source of exchange, won't established regulatory authorities, governments, financial, and so forth, step in to exert more control over it than they have? Haven't they been ignoring it because it's just generally too small to bother with right now?
No, I think that's a misconception about Bitcoin. I think there's certain regulatory authorities who have been ignoring it because it's too small, but the ones that are really affected by it, whose statutory obligations are really affected, have been regulating it from the very beginning. So if you think about the Treasury Department, FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, they've been very clear about how their regulations apply to Bitcoin and how intermediaries in the Bitcoin space have to comply with their rules. You're starting to see the CFTC approve Bitcoin futures exchanges. Eventually, we'll see the CFPB get involved. Right now, it's probably too small a market for the CFPB to be concerned about consumer protection there, but we'll see that.
Is Bitcoin
Now, if there's one name he didn't mention, that was that of the SEC. I'm just saying. Now, FinCEN, if you look back to their history in their regulation with crypto, you can see they've all already squared away with Ripple Labs before, with Bitcoin, and they've basically created a paper trail of a number of regulatory interjections that Jerry Brito is saying, and this is back in 2015, that is starting to go on. And the space wasn't as big, the market cap wasn't nearing 2 trillion, and so things have changed. But here he is, Jerry Brito, 6 years ago. And here's Jerry Brito's last tweet for the night. "It's not over, but it's almost over. There's still a chance, but it's a small one. We're back at it tomorrow, a.m." Now, what does this all mean? It means what a lot of people have been seeing, that regulation is coming, and it's coming quick. And it looks like, what would appear to be a favorable administration in taking the time to, be thoughtful with this, with regulation. Here we have an example of stuff being thrown into a bill that, quite frankly, people were kind of scratching their heads on what it's doing there. It would almost make sense to take it out completely. I'm not sure if the amendment. I appreciate the amendment. I just don't know its implications moving forward. But Jerry Brito seems to be pleased with it. All I know is that we're going to probably be seeing more of this. We're going to see a lot of agencies all of a sudden pay attention, pretend like they know what they're talking about within the cryptocurrency space. But the reality is that some of these conversations have been happening for years, and it doesn't matter if it's crypto, if it's some other project you're working on. Imagine working on a project for a number of years and then someone just showing up last minute and putting the kibosh on it. And ultimately, that's what people fear, is the time and money that has been spent in the development in this space. And right now is really a time for everybody in the cryptocurrency space to come together. No longer is it, hey, I'm an XRP army guy, or hey, I'm all about Bitcoin. This is going to be a fight, and it could get ugly. We shall see. Um, but if you look at going back to this bill, and I'm going to leave it here and wrap it up, is just the number of actions that happen on these bills. The text has been changed 4 times, 150 actions taken. Titles, amendments, all this stuff you can see online, but. Again, this bill is just sitting on Capitol Hill. So that's going to do it. And I'll be following this week, and hopefully you will too. This is the Desert Sun. Thank you for tuning in to Desert Sun Crypto. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button once you're done watching this video. Take care.